New year, new me. Unfortunately, new me has been dead for approximately 3 weeks because today we're attempting one of the oldest and most competitive speedruns in human history, dying as an ancient human. Now, before we begin, it's important to understand that ancient humans weren't living in some peaceful Disney movie where everyone spent their day petting wolves and discovering berries. Ancient life was a constant struggle for survival. There were no hospitals, no antibiotics, no grocery stores, and no emergency services. If something went wrong, there usually wasn't a backup plan. You either recovered on your own or became a future archaeological mystery. So let's go over some of the fastest ways to end your run. The first strategy I'd recommend is drinking literally any water you find. Modern humans have become weirdly entitled about clean water. Ancient humans didn't have water filters. They had optimism. Every river, puddle, pond, and suspiciously wet hole in the ground was basically a gamble. Maybe you get hydration. Maybe you get dysentery, cholera-like illnesses, or a parasite that decides that your digestive system looks like prime real estate. Water sources were often contaminated by animal waste or other humans living upstream. Today, diarrhea is an inconvenience. Back then, diarrhea could be fatal. If your body started losing fluids faster than you could replace them, there wasn't much you could do except get weaker by the hour. For children especially, a simple stomach illness could become deadly in a matter of days. What's especially interesting is that many ancient communities settled near rivers because they needed reliable access to water, fish, transportation routes, and fertile soil. Unfortunately, living near water also meant constant exposure to waterborne diseases. In some regions, parasites could spend part of their life cycle in freshwater snails before making their way into humans. Archaeologists studying ancient remains have even discovered evidence in intestinal parasites preserved in fossilized feces, proving that stomach problems have been ruining people's lives for thousands of years. In many cases, people may not have understood why entire groups became sick after drinking from a particular source. They only knew that sometimes the water that kept them alive could also quietly kill them. Of course, dehydration is actually a pretty slow strategy if you're trying to compete with the top rankings. For a faster run, I'd recommend interacting with large animals. Ancient humans shared the planet with creatures that could be absolutely terrifying. Mammoths could weigh up to 10 tons. Woolly rhinoceroses carried massive horns and had no interest in personal boundaries. Ancient bison were built like armored trucks, and cave bears could stand over 10 feet tall when upright. Even something as common as a wild horse or aurochs, the giant wild cattle that eventually gave rise to modern cows, could seriously injure or kill a person with a single kick or charge. One thing you'll notice about ancient humans is that they often had to get close to dangerous animals in order to hunt them. If you see a multi-ton animal covered in muscle and sharp parts and decide to approach it with a wooden spear, you're taking a risk that modern people rarely have to consider. What many people don't realize is that hunting large animals wasn't just dangerous because of the animal itself. The hunt could last for hours or even days. Hunters often have to track prey across rough terrain, through forests, over cliffs, or across frozen landscapes. A single mistake could result in a broken leg, a fall, or becoming separated from your group. Some archaeological sites suggest that ancient humans coordinated in surprisingly sophisticated ways, using teamwork to drive animals into natural traps or difficult terrain. While that increased their chances of success, it also meant standing dangerously close to panicked animals weighing several tons. A wounded mammoth or bison was arguably more dangerous than a healthy one because it had every reason to fight back. Now, personally, I think getting trampled is a little too dramatic. The real professionals die from something much dumber. For example, getting a cut. Today you could slice your finger open while opening an Amazon package and have access to antiseptics, bandages, antibiotics, and doctors. Ancient humans got a cut and hoped for the best. One tiny scrape from a stone tool or a thorn or a sharp bone could become infected. The infection becomes a fever. The fever becomes delirium. Without any understanding of bacteria, people have no way of understanding why seemingly minor injuries sometimes turn deadly. Archaeologists have found skeletons showing signs of severe infections that likely began with relatively small wounds. In a world without modern medicine, even a broken tooth could develop into a life-threatening abscess. Dental problems in particular were far more dangerous than most people imagine. Today, a toothache usually means an annoying trip to the dentist. In ancient times, an infected tooth could spread bacteria into the jaw, bloodstream, or surrounding tissues. Researchers have found skulls showing evidence of several dental disease, worn down teeth, and abscesses that would have caused constant pain. Ancient diets often contained grit from stone ground foods, which gradually wore away enamel over time. Something as ordinary as chewing food every day could slowly create a serious medical problem with no reliable treatment available. If infection isn't fast enough, there's always caves. Ancient humans loved caves. They're warm, dry, and generally better than sleeping outside during thunderstorms. Unfortunately, caves were also incredibly popular among everything else that wanted warm, dryness, and shelter. The difference is that some of those tenants had claws the size of kitchen knives. One reliable speedrun strategy is entering a dark cave and assuming that the first creature to think of it. Maybe it's empty. Maybe it's occupied by a bear. Maybe it's occupied by a bear that was having a perfectly good day until you wandered into its living room. Archaeological evidence suggests that humans and large predators often competed for the same shelters, which means cave exploration especially turned into a very one-sided negotiation. Caves also came with hazards that had nothing to do with predators. Poor ventilation could allow smoke from fires to accumulate. Uneven ground increased the risk of falls. Some cave systems extended deep underground where getting lost could become a genuine possibility. Evidence from prehistoric cave sites suggests that people sometimes traveled surprisingly far into dark cave networks, likely using primitive lamps fueled by animal fat. It's honestly impressive that more people didn't accidentally turn themselves into permanent cave decorations. Speaking of terrible housing decisions, let's talk about fire. We tend to think of fire as this magical tool that helped our ancestors survive. And though that may be true, it also occasionally helped them stop surviving. Ancient humans didn't have smoke detectors. They didn't have fire extinguishers. They didn't have fire-resistant building materials. If a spark escaped and landed somewhere unfortunate, an entire camp could be destroyed in minutes. Fire provided warmth, protection, and cooked food, but it also demanded constant attention. One careless moment could wipe out precious supplies that took months to gather. Fire also created dangers that are easy to overlook. Smoke inhalation could damage lungs over long periods of time, especially in enclosed shelters with poor ventilation. Studies of ancient skeletons and preserved remains suggest that many people spent years breathing smoke from indoor fires. While fire made food safer and easier to digest, maintaining it required gathering fuel, transporting burning embers, and constantly monitoring flames. Losing a fire could be disastrous, but keeping one alive carried risks of its own. Humanity's relationship with fire has always been less master of nature and more carefully supervised partnership with a very destructive roommate. But none of these strategies compared to the undisputed champion of ancient life, winter. Modern people experience winter by complaining that their car is cold. Ancient humans experienced winter by wondering whether food would continue existing. Winter didn't just lower the temperature, it amplified every other problem simultaneously. Hunting became harder, gathering became harder, travel became harder, existing became harder. Rivers froze, edible plants disappeared, and animals migrated away from familiar hunting grounds. A failed hunt in summer was frustrating. A failed hunt in winter could mean starvation. Entire communities could be pushed to the brink by a season that lasted a little longer than expected, or temperatures that dropped a little lower than normal. Ancient people couldn't simply order extra supplies when resources ran low. Food had to be hunted, gathered, preserved, and protected from spoilage. A harsh winter combined with poor hunting conditions could create a chain reaction of problems lasting months. Malnutrition weakened immune systems, making disease more dangerous. Weakened individuals struggled to travel or hunt effectively, which reduced food acquisition even further. In some regions, evidence from tree rings and climate records suggests that relatively small shifts in temperature or rainfall could dramatically affect human populations. That said, even winter isn't the most dangerous thing ancient humans faced. The number one threat throughout much of human history was actually another ancient human. Humans have always had a remarkable ability to turn disagreements into disasters. Maybe someone wanted your hunting territory. Maybe somebody wanted access to a water source. Maybe resources became scarce after a harsh season and tensions boiled over. Archaeological sites contain evidence of violent injuries, including spear wounds, skull fractures, and defensive injuries that suggest conflict between groups was not uncommon. Whatever the reason, other humans could be every bit as dangerous as predators, disease, or the environment itself. The funny thing is that after thousands of years of technological progress, we've somehow managed to preserve this particular tradition perfectly. Some archaeological discoveries have revealed entire burial sites containing individuals who appear to have died in violent encounters. Researchers have found embedded projectile points, healed fractures from previous conflicts, and signs that some people survived multiple serious injuries before eventually dying from from another. This suggests that violence wasn't necessarily constant, but it was common enough to leave a visible mark on the archaeological record. Competition over territory, migration routes, food sources, and access to fresh water likely played major roles. In many ways, humans became one of the most successful species on Earth because of cooperation. Ironically, that same ability to organize and coordinate also made us exceptionally effective at fighting each other. And that's really what makes ancient human life so fascinating. Every day involved risk, every hunt involved risk, every meal involved risk, every injury involved risk. You can make all the right decisions and still end up losing to bad luck, bad weather, or circumstances completely outside your control. Looking back, the most impressive part of human history isn't that people died so often, is that enough people somehow survived droughts, predators, disease, famine, accidents, and conflict to build villages, cities, and eventually entire civilizations. Honestly, when you consider everything working against them, simply reaching adulthood was already an incredible achievement. What's even more remarkable is that despite all these dangers, ancient humans were incredibly adaptable. They developed tools, clothing, shelters, hunting strategies, social networks, and survival techniques that allowed them to spread across nearly every environment on Earth. They crossed deserts, survived ice age, navigated coastlines, and settled regions that would have seemed completely inhospitable. The archaeological record often focuses on death because bones preserve evidence of injuries and disease, but every ancient skeleton also represents a survival story. Many individuals lived through broken bones, harsh winters, dangerous hunts, and illnesses that should have killed them. The fact that humanity managed to persist through countless generations of challenges is arguably one of the greatest achievements in history. The ancient world was dangerous, unpredictable, and often brutal, yet somehow our ancestors kept winning just enough runs to ensure that we're here today talking about how badly they could have lost them.